The crystal towers of Cathara Prime stretched into the purple sky like frozen lightning. Each building pulsed with inner light, casting rainbow patterns across the perfect streets below. No dust settled here. No chaos existed. Everything followed, the ancient order that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Commander Zekthar stood before the great viewing wall in his private chambers, watching the massive shipyards in orbit around his homeworld. Hundreds of warships floated in, perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like polished gems. Each vessel was a work of art, deadly and beautiful. The sight filled him with pride. His aide, Sub-Commander Melkara, entered the chamber with silent steps. The younger Kithara kept his mental shields tight, as proper respect demanded. "Commander, the 47th Subjugation Fleet reports ready for departure." Zekthar turned from the window. His crystalline form caught the light and scattered it in brilliant colors across the walls. Like all Cathara, he stood nearly 8 feet tall, his body composed of living crystal that could reshape itself at will. His thoughts moved through the mental networks that connected all his kind, but he kept them focused and controlled. 200 worlds conquered, Zekthar said, his voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. 200 species brought under Dominion rule. Some submitted peacefully when they saw our ships. Others fought and learned the cost of resistance. All now serve the greater order. Yes, Commander, the galaxy knows our power. Melkara's mental voice carried deep respect. What new world shall we bring into the light? Zekthar moved to his command desk, where holographic displays showed star charts of the Outer Rim territories. Most sectors glowed green, marking worlds under Dominion control. A few scattered yellow dots remained, primitive species not worth the effort of conquest. But one small system in the outer spiral arm had begun showing unusual energy readings. "The scouts have detected something interesting," Zekthar said, touching the display to zoom in on a small yellow star. "This system shows signs of recent technological development, primitive but growing rapidly." The display showed a blue-green world orbiting in the habitable zone. Data streams flowed beside the image, filled with numbers and analysis from the deep space monitoring stations. Melkara studied the information with growing confusion. "Commander, these readings make little sense. The energy signatures suggest they have achieved spaceflight, but their technology appears crude and inefficient. They use chemical rockets and nuclear power sources." Exactly what caught our attention. Zekthar manipulated the display to show recorded transmissions from the planet. Listen to their communications. Static-filled voices filled the chamber, speaking in dozens of different languages. The translation systems worked to make sense of the chaos, but even the cleaned-up version sounded harsh and emotional to Cathara ears. "They call themselves humans," Zekthar continued. "The probe data shows they have divided their world into hundreds of separate territories. They fight constantly among themselves over resources, land, and abstract concepts they call beliefs. They show extreme emotional responses to simple situations. They have no telepathic abilities at all." Melkara tilted his head, crystals shifting, to show confusion. "No telepathy? How do they coordinate anything? How do they maintain order?" "They don't." Zekthar's mental tone carried amusement. "They appear to be violent animals who have stumbled upon basic technology. Their weapons are crude but numerous. They have covered their world with devices designed to kill their own kind. The probe counted over 20,000 nuclear weapons, pointed at their own cities. Fascinating. Do they pose any threat to the Dominion?" Zekthar's crystalline form shimmered with what humans might have recognized as laughter. The idea seemed so ridiculous that other Cathara in the mental network picked up his amusement and shared it across the command structure. Threat? From creatures who cannot even unite their own world? Their largest spacecraft carry perhaps 50 individuals. Their weapons fire solid projectiles and chemical explosives. They would be like insects trying to fight a star. He paused, considering the strategic implications. But they might serve a useful purpose. "Commander, the young warriors in our fleet have never faced real combat. The last few conquests have been too easy. Primitive species that surrendered the moment our ships appeared in their skies. Our soldiers grow soft without proper challenges." Zekthar highlighted the human world on his display. This species might provide excellent training. They appear aggressive enough to fight back, but primitive enough to ensure no real danger to our forces. Melkara understood immediately. A live fire, exercise against creatures that will actually resist. Precisely. We'll approach their world with a small force. 3 destroyer-class vessels should be more than enough. We'll demand their surrender, as is proper. And when they refuse, our young warriors can practice real combat against a species that has some fight in them. And if they surrender immediately, then we'll have another world added to the Dominion with minimal effort. Either outcome serves our purposes. Zekthar began issuing mental commands to his fleet commanders. Select crews with the least combat experience. This will be their chance to prove themselves against actual resistance. The orders flowed through the crystal networks that connected all Cathara mines. Within hours, 3 sleek destroyers detached from the main fleet and began their journey toward the outer rim. Each ship stretched over a mile in length, powered by quantum cores that could crack planets. Their crews of 500 warriors each had trained for decades in the arts of war, but none had faced an enemy that truly fought back. Zekthar watched the ships disappear into hyperspace, their destinations locked on the small blue world that called itself Earth. In 3 days they would arrive and make contact with these humans. The creatures would have one chance to surrender peacefully and join the Dominion as servants. If they refused, they would learn why the Cathara had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years without a single defeat. The commander returned to his viewing wall, gazing out at the perfect order of his civilization. Soon, one more world would learn the benefits of Cathara rule. The humans would either submit or be destroyed, like every other species that had stood against the Dominion. The outcome was as certain as the laws of physics themselves. After all, what could primitive animals with crude weapons possibly do against the might of the Cathara Empire? Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. The coffee was terrible, like everything else aboard the UES Defiant, but it was hot, and it kept him awake during the long patrol shifts beyond Neptune's orbit. He had been staring at the same empty starfield for 6 hours when Lieutenant Tony Baker's voice cracked through the bridge speakers. "Captain, you need to see this. 3 massive contacts just appeared on long-range sensors." Morrison sat down, his coffee cup, and walked to the sensor station. The displays showed 3 objects that made no sense at all. Each one was over a mile long and moving through space without any visible propulsion system. They had appeared from nowhere, as if space itself had opened up and spat them out. "Distance?" Morrison asked. 4 million kilometers and closing. They're not broadcasting any identification signals. Hell, Captain, they're not broadcasting anything at all. Just sitting there like they own the place. Morrison felt ice form in his stomach. Humanity had been alone in the universe for as long as anyone could remember. Sure, there had been theories about alien life, but finding actual proof was something else entirely. He reached for the communications panel. "Get me Earth Command, Priority Alpha." The response came back in seconds. Admiral Grace Parker's voice filled the bridge, tense and controlled. "Defiant, we're tracking the same contacts. What's your assessment?" "Unknown vessels, Admiral. Definitely not human construction. They're big enough to carry thousands of people, and their technology is beyond anything we have." "Understood. Maintain distance, but keep them in sensor range. We're scrambling the Ranger and Guardian to your position. Do not engage unless fired upon." Morrison acknowledged the order and settled in to wait. The next few hours passed like years. The alien ships held their position while Earth's governments went crazy trying to figure out what to do. The president called emergency sessions. The military went to high alert. Scientists argued about first contact protocols while politicians screamed about national security. Then the aliens made the first move. Lieutenant Baker's console erupted with warning signals. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's in English." Morrison felt his blood turn cold. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything human. It sounded like wind chimes mixed with breaking glass, but the words were clear enough. "Primitive species of Earth, you will submit to Cathara Dominion rule or face complete extinction. You have one solar rotation to surrender your planet and accept your place as servants of the greater order. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in dead silence. Morrison stared at the tactical display, where 3 alien warships sat waiting for an answer, one day to surrender the entire human race or face extinction. The choice seemed simple enough, but Morrison had never been good at simple choices. "Get me Earth Command again," he said. President Lisa Coleman's face appeared on the main screen, an hour later, surrounded by advisors and military officials. She looked tired and angry, which Morrison figured was probably the right response to being told your entire species had to surrender or die. "Captain Morrison," she began, "the United Earth Council has considered the alien demands. We've consulted with every government on the planet and reviewed all available options." Morrison waited. He could see other ships on his sensors now. The Ranger under Captain Ben Harper had arrived, along with the Guardian under Captain Amy Stone. 12 human warships total, facing 3 alien vessels that could probably destroy entire cities. "Our response is simple," President Coleman continued. "We don't surrender to anyone. Not now, not ever. Humanity will fight." Morrison nodded. He had expected nothing less, but hearing it confirmed still sent adrenaline rushing through his veins. "Understood, Madam President. What are your orders?" "Defend Earth. Show these aliens that humans don't kneel." The transmission ended, leaving Morrison alone with the hardest decision of his life. He looked around the bridge at his crew. 26 men and women who had signed up to explore space, not fight an interstellar war. They were looking at him, now waiting for orders that would probably get them all killed. "Well," Morrison said, surprised by how calm his own voice sounded. "You heard the President. We're going to fight." The deadline passed at exactly 1400 hours Earth time. Morrison watched the chronometer tick down to 0 while his small fleet held position between the alien ships and Earth. Captain Harper's voice came through the communications channel. "Jake, my sensors are showing energy buildup on those alien ships. I think they're powering weapons." "Copy that, Ben. All ships, prepare for combat. Target the lead vessel." The aliens fired first. Beams of pure energy lanced across space, tearing through the outer defense platforms like they were made of paper. Space Station New Geneva exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Earth's surface. 50,000 people died in the first 3 seconds of humanity's first interstellar war. Morrison felt rage build in his chest like a nuclear reactor going critical. "All ships return fire. Everything we have." The human weapons were primitive compared to alien energy beams, but they worked. Nuclear missiles streaked across the void while railguns fired tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. The aliens had shields that absorbed most of the damage, but some shots got through. Captain Stone's voice cut through the battle chatter. "Direct hit on the starboard vessel. Their shields are fluctuating." Morrison saw his chance. The Defiant was the oldest ship in the fleet, built 20 years ago when humanity had just started venturing beyond the solar system. She was slow and her weapons were outdated, but she had one advantage the newer ships lacked. Her reactor had been designed by engineers who believed in backup systems for backup systems. "All ships, continue firing. Cover my approach." "Jake, what are you doing?" Harper demanded. Morrison was already programming the reactor for overload. The process would take 90 seconds, which was exactly how long he figured it would take to reach the damaged alien ship. "Something stupid, Ben. Make sure you tell the story right." He pushed the Defiant's engines to maximum burn, racing toward the alien vessel while energy beams tried to swat him out of space. His ship shook under the impacts, hull plates peeling away like old paint. The bridge caught fire. Half his crew was dead or wounded, but Morrison kept flying. The Defiant struck the alien ship at full speed, her overloading reactor turning both vessels into a miniature sun. The explosion lit up the solar system and sent shockwaves racing across space. When the light faded, debris from 2 ships drifted where one alien warship had been. The remaining alien vessels pulled back, apparently surprised that prey animals had actually hurt them. Morrison didn't see their retreat. He was already dead, along with his entire crew. But they had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity would not surrender. Not ever. Commander Zekthar stared at the empty space where his destroyer had been. The tactical display showed only debris and radiation where the Cathara ship Eternal Victory should have been floating. One of his vessels, crewed by 500 warriors, had been destroyed by creatures that barely understood spaceflight. Impossible, he whispered, his crystalline form flickering with rage. The mental networks of the Dominion buzzed with disbelief. For 3,000 years, no enemy had managed to destroy a Cathara warship. Now, these primitive humans had done it with a suicide attack that made no logical sense. Sub-Commander Melkara approached carefully, keeping his mental shields tight. Commander, the High Council is demanding a full report. They want to know how animals with chemical rockets managed to kill our warriors. Zekthar turned away from the display. His pride burned like molten metal. The humans had humiliated him, in front of the entire Dominion. Warriors across the galaxy were talking about the creatures that had actually fought back and won. The story would spread to every world under Cathara control. Prepare the full battle group, Zekthar said, his voice cutting through crystal networks like a blade. 30 ships. I will personally lead the assault on their world. These humans will learn what happens when animals bite their masters. Commander, perhaps we should study their tactics first. The human ship that destroyed the Eternal Victory used methods we have never encountered. They deliberately sacrificed themselves to damage us. No rational species would waste resources in such a manner. Exactly why they must be destroyed completely. Zekthar began issuing orders through the mental networks. Alert all commanders. We depart for the human system immediately. I want their world turned to ash and their species extinct. No survivors, no prisoners, nothing must remain to remember this insult. Meanwhile, Earth had become a world at war. Every factory, every resource, every person was focused on one goal: survival. The alien attack had killed 50,000 people in the first seconds. But it had also done something the aliens never expected. It had united every nation on Earth under a single purpose. Dr. Kevin Clark stood in the wreckage of what had been a Cathara energy weapon, studying the alien technology with teams of scientists from 12 different countries. The destroyed alien ship had provided humanity with its first look at weapons that could destroy planets. The technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had built, but it followed principles that could be understood. The power systems are beyond us, Clark told the assembled team. But their shield generators have a weakness. They operate on rotating frequencies that cycle every 37 seconds. If we can time our attacks correctly, we might be able to punch through their defenses. Admiral Grace Parker stood at the head of the table, her face showing the strain of the past 4 months. She had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces, which meant she was responsible for keeping the human race alive. The job was not as rewarding as she had hoped. What about ship production, she asked. Engineer Ryan Bell pulled up holographic displays showing construction sites across the solar system. We've converted every shipyard to military production. The asteroid belt is being mined around the clock. We're using 3D printing technology to build ships faster than ever before. But they're still not as advanced as what the aliens have. How many ships can we field? If we strip every resource from every colony, abandon all non-essential projects and convert civilian vessels to military use, we can have 800 ships ready when the aliens return. Parker felt her heart sink. 800 human ships against 30 alien vessels that were each more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. The mathematics of the situation were simple and brutal. What about weapons? Nuclear missiles, with improved guidance systems. Railguns that can fire tungsten slugs at 20% of light speed. And, Bell hesitated. We've developed something new. Small, fast attack craft designed around a single concept. Which is ramming attacks. Each ship carries one pilot and enough explosive power to damage alien vessels. They're basically guided missiles with human brains. Parker closed her eyes. They were talking about building suicide ships and asking for volunteers to fly them. The idea should have been horrifying, but she already knew what the response would be. Ever since the first alien attack, recruitment centers had been overwhelmed with people wanting to fight. The waiting list for combat positions was over 2 million names long. How many volunteers do we have for the attack craft? All of them, Admiral. Every pilot in the fleet has requested assignment to the program. We've had to turn away thousands of applicants. Lieutenant Sam Cross was one of the pilots who had made the cut. He stood in the hangar bay of the UES Hornet, looking at his new ship. The craft was barely larger than an old fighter jet, with engines that could push it to incredible speeds and a nuclear warhead where the cargo bay should have been. It was designed to do one thing: get close enough to an alien ship to cause maximum damage when it exploded. Beautiful, isn't she? Major Kate Johnson walked up beside him. She was one of the squadron leaders, a veteran pilot who had volunteered for the program despite having a family waiting for her on Earth. They're calling it the Wasp class, small, fast, and with a hell of a sting. Cross nodded. How many sorties do you think we'll get? Honestly, probably one. These ships aren't built to come home. But if we can take out enough alien vessels, the big ships might have a chance. The preparations continued for months. Every human settlement in the solar system contributed to the war effort. Children too young to fight built components in factories. Old people who remembered the last World War shared their knowledge of desperate tactics. Scientists worked 20-hour days developing new weapons. Engineers pushed construction schedules beyond anything thought possible. When the alien fleet finally arrived, they found a very different enemy than they had faced before. Instead of 12 human ships, they faced 800 vessels of every size and description. Converted passenger liners carried nuclear weapons. Mining ships had been fitted with railguns. Cargo haulers had been turned into missile platforms. And swarming between the larger ships were 300 Wasp-class attack craft, each piloted by a volunteer who had no intention of going home. Commander Zekthar looked at the tactical display with growing confusion. The humans had somehow multiplied their fleet by 60 in just 4 months. It was impossible, but the sensor readings did not lie. The space around Earth crawled with human vessels. How did they build so many ships? Melkara asked. It doesn't matter, Zekthar replied, though doubt was beginning to creep into his thoughts. Quantity cannot overcome quality. Begin the attack. Show these humans what real power looks like. The second battle for Earth began with alien energy weapons tearing through the outer defense lines. Dozens of human ships died in the first minutes, their hulls no match for Cathera technology. But this time, the humans were ready. As the alien ships advanced, they found themselves surrounded by swarms of smaller vessels. The Wasp fighters darted between the larger ships like angry insects, moving too fast for the alien weapons to track effectively. When the aliens tried to concentrate fire on the fighters, the larger human ships attacked from different angles. Lieutenant Cross pushed his fighter through a gap in the alien formation, his target locked on the enemy flagship. Energy beams lit up space around him, but he kept flying. His ship shook under near misses, systems failing one by one, but the engines kept running. He was 500 meters from the alien ship when his fighter finally died. The engines cut out, life support failed, and the hull began to buckle. But Cross had enough momentum to reach his target. The nuclear warhead detonated against the alien ship's hull, sending cracks racing through the crystalline structure. The explosion was followed by dozens of others as more fighters reached their targets. The space around Earth became a field of fire and debris. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Kithera commander gave the order to retreat. Zekthar watched his fleet pull back from the human world, leaving 8 ships destroyed and thousands of warriors dead. The primitives had done more than hurt him. They had made him afraid. As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, the surviving human crews looked at each other in amazement. They had faced impossible odds and somehow won. But they all knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would be back, and next time they would be angry. High Admiral Velthara stood before the War Council of the Kithera Dominion, her crystalline form dimmed with shame. Around the circular chamber, the greatest military minds of the galaxy sat in stunned silence. The holographic display in the center showed the impossible truth. 8 Kithera warships destroyed by creatures that should not have been able to scratch their hulls. "Explain this failure," demanded Grand Admiral Kexnoth, his mental voice cutting through the crystal networks like ice. How did Commander Zekthar lose 8 ships to animals that fight with chemical explosives? Velthara activated the battle. Recordings. The council watched in horror as swarms of tiny human ships surrounded the Kythera fleet like insects attacking giants. They saw the suicide attacks, the ramming runs, the complete disregard for survival that made no logical sense. The humans fight in ways we have never encountered, Velthara explained. They deliberately sacrifice their own lives to damage our ships. They use their weakness as a weapon, swarming us with vessels too small and numerous for our weapons to effectively target. Impossible. No species would waste resources so carelessly. Yet they do. Our analysis shows they converted their entire civilization to military production in 4 months. Every factory, every resource, every person was dedicated to building weapons. They abandoned all non-essential activities and focused solely on war. Grand Admiral Kexnoth studied the tactical data with growing disbelief. This is madness. A civilization cannot survive such complete militarization. Their economy must have collapsed. No, Admiral. It grew stronger. When faced with extinction, these humans became more efficient than our own production centers. They built 800 warships using technologies they had never attempted before. The council exchanged worried glances through their mental networks. The Kythera had built their empire on logical principles. Conquest was profitable. Resistance was expensive. Eventually, every species calculated the cost and surrendered. But humans seemed to operate on entirely different mathematics. Meanwhile, humanity was proving that desperation could be the mother of invention. Dr. Kevin Clark's research teams had spent months studying every piece of alien wreckage they could find, working around the clock in laboratories built inside asteroid mining stations. They had begun to unlock the secrets of Kythera technology. "We've cracked their shield harmonics," Clark announced to a gathering of Earth's top scientists and military leaders. "The frequency rotation follows a predictable pattern. If we time our attacks correctly, we can punch through their defenses with conventional weapons." Admiral Parker leaned forward in her chair. The stress of commanding humanity's defense had aged her 10 years in 6 months, but her eyes still burned with determination. What about their propulsion systems? That's where it gets interesting. They use something called quantum folding to travel faster than light. We can't duplicate it yet, but we can detect it. We'll know when they're coming long before they arrive. Engineer Ryan Bell pulled up new ship designs on the holographic display. "We've also learned something important about their tactics. They rely on overwhelming technological superiority. They expect enemies to flee or surrender when faced with superior firepower. But what happens when the enemy refuses to run? They keep fighting until they win," Parker said grimly, "or until they lose everything trying. That's our advantage. We don't have superior technology, but we have something they don't understand: stubbornness." The war expanded beyond Earth's solar system faster than anyone expected. Captain Steve Palmer commanded the first human interstellar mission aboard the UES Pioneer, a modified generation ship carrying 10,000 colonists and enough weapons to level a small moon. Their destination was Alpha Centauri, where Kythera forces had established a forward base. Palmer stood on the bridge watching the alien base grow larger on the view screen. The facility looked like a crystal flower blooming in space, beautiful and deadly. Sensor readings showed 30 ships and enough firepower to destroy Earth's entire fleet. "Range to target?" Palmer asked. 50,000 kilometers and closing. "They're hailing us, Captain. Put them through." The alien voice filled the bridge with its wind chime harmonics. "Human vessel, you have entered Kythera territory. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Palmer smiled grimly. The aliens still thought in terms of territory and borders, as if space belonged to anyone. "This is Captain Palmer of the United Earth Fleet. We don't recognize your claim to this system. Surrender your base and withdraw your forces." The response came in the form of energy beams that lit up space around the Pioneer. Palmer's ship shook under the impacts, but her shields held. The modifications Dr. Clark's teams had made were working. All weapons return fire. Launch fighters. The battle for Alpha Centauri lasted 6 hours. The humans were outnumbered 3-1, but they fought with tactics the aliens had never seen before. Palmer's colonists launched in mining pods converted to assault craft, attacking the base from every direction at once. When the aliens tried to concentrate their defenses, human ships appeared from behind asteroids where they had been hiding for weeks. The Kythera base fell when a team of human engineers in spacesuits manually planted nuclear charges on its power core. The explosion could be seen from Earth through the most powerful telescopes, a new star burning briefly in the constellation Centaurus. But the real shock came later, when rescue ships arrived to find something impossible. The humans had not withdrawn after their victory. Instead, they were building their own base in the system's asteroid belt. Captain Palmer's colonists were digging in for a permanent stay. Lieutenant Commander Beth Rogers discovered humanity's greatest advantage during a raid on a Kythera supply convoy. Her small task force had been hunting alien ships for 3 months, striking fast and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. It was during one of these attacks that she captured Admiral Sekvara, the highest-ranking Kythera officer ever taken alive. The interrogation took place on a secret facility hidden in the Jupiter system. Rogers sat across from the crystalline alien, studying the creature that represented everything humanity was fighting against. Sekvara's form flickered with colors that indicated confusion and fear. "Your species makes no logical sense," the alien said through the translation system. "You fight wars you cannot win. You sacrifice resources you cannot afford to lose. You attack targets that offer no strategic value." Rogers leaned back in her chair. "That's because you don't understand what we're fighting for." "Explain." "You fight for conquest, for territory and resources and the glory of your empire. We fight for something you don't have. Freedom. The right to exist without anyone's permission. Freedom is an illusion. Order is the only truth in the universe. Maybe for you. But humans would rather die free than live as slaves." The alien's form shifted to deeper blues, indicating deep thought. "You would destroy your entire civilization rather than accept guidance from a superior species?" Without hesitation, Rogers saw something flicker across the alien's crystalline features that might have been fear. For the first time, Sekvara was beginning to understand what the Dominion had awakened. The humans were not just another species to be conquered, they were something entirely new, a civilization that would choose extinction over surrender. Tharn. Intelligence Rogers extracted from Sekvara changed everything. The location of major Kythera shipyards, supply routes, and command centers. Weaknesses in their defense networks. Most importantly, the revelation that the Dominion's other subject species were watching the war with growing interest. Commander Tony. Blake received the mission briefings in a secure facility on Mars. His task force had been selected for humanity's most dangerous operation yet. A direct assault on the Kythera shipyard at Kelvin Prime, deep in enemy territory. The target produces half of their military vessels, Blake explained to his assembled captains. If we can destroy it, we'll cripple their ability to replace losses. The problem is getting there alive. Captain Lisa Ward studied the tactical projections. Kelvin Prime is defended by over 100 ships. Even if we use everything we've learned about their technology, we'll be outnumbered 10-1. Which is why we're not going to fight fair. Blake activated a new display showing the captured Kythera vessel they had spent months repairing. "We're going to use their own ship as a Trojan horse. Ward, you'll command the captured vessel and get us past their outer defenses. Once we're inside, we hit them fast and hard." The plan was insane, but that had become humanity's specialty. In 18 months of war, they had learned that the impossible was just another word for something that had not been tried yet. As Blake's task force prepared for departure, reports came in from across the galaxy. Human raids had struck 17 different systems. Kythera supply lines were under constant attack. Most importantly, 3 subject species had begun open rebellions against Dominion rule, inspired by humanity's refusal to surrender. The war was spreading, and for the first time in 3,000 years, the Kythera Dominion was fighting for its survival. The stolen Kythera ship drifted through space like a ghost returning home. Captain Lisa Ward stood on its crystalline bridge, surrounded by alien technology that her crew had spent months learning to operate. The vessel's original name translated roughly to Divine Order, but the humans had renamed it Payback in bold letters painted across the hull. "Kelvin Prime dead ahead," reported Lieutenant Dan Morris from the sensor station. "The shipyard is even bigger than our intelligence suggested." Ward studied the tactical display with growing amazement. The Kythera shipyard stretched across an area the size of Earth's moon, with hundreds of docks building warships simultaneously. Energy readings showed the facility could construct a dozen battleships every month. If humanity was going to have any chance of winning this war, this place had to burn. "Any response to our identification codes?" Ward asked. "Nothing yet. As far as they know, we're the Divine Order returning from a routine patrol." Morris paused, checking his readings again. "Captain, I'm detecting over 200 ships in the system. This isn't going to be easy." Ward activated her communication system, sending a coded message to the human fleet hiding in the outer system. Commander Tony Blake's task force was waiting for her signal, ready to begin the most desperate operation in human history. 3 hours later, Blake received Ward's transmission. "The front door is open. Come on in." The human fleet consisted of 15 ships, each one a masterpiece of desperate engineering. Dr. Kevin Clark's research teams had spent months installing experimental phase shift drives reverse-engineered from captured Kythera technology. The drives would allow human ships to appear anywhere in the system without warning, but they were untested and potentially deadly to use. "All ships, prepare for phase jump," Blake announced. "Remember, we get one shot at this. If we fail here, Earth loses its best chance to hurt them where it counts." The phase drives activated with a sound like reality tearing apart. Space twisted around the human ships, colors bleeding together in ways that made veteran spacers sick to their stomachs. Then suddenly they were there, materialized in the heart of the Kythera shipyard like avenging angels. The aliens reacted exactly as Blake had hoped, slowly. 3,000 years of unchallenged dominance had made them complacent. Their sensors detected the human ships, but their brains refused to believe what they were seeing. Primitive animals did not simply appear in the middle of heavily defended systems. Blake used those precious seconds of confusion to devastating effect. "All ships target the power distribution nodes, make every shot count." The UES Retribution led the attack, her railguns firing tungsten slugs at the massive power generators that fed the shipyard. Captain Ben Harper's ship hit the primary fusion reactor, sending cascades of energy racing through the facility's crystal networks. Captain Amy Stone targeted the construction docks, where half-built warships exploded in spectacular displays of fire and metal. But the Kythera were not helpless. Once the initial shock wore off, they responded with coordinated fury. Energy beams lanced out from defense platforms and patrol ships, tearing through the human formation. The UES Guardian took a direct hit, her hull splitting open like a flower blooming in reverse. "Stone's ship is gone," reported Blake's tactical officer. "The Ranger is taking heavy damage." Blake watched his fleet being torn apart by superior firepower, but he had expected this. The mission was never about bringing everyone home. It was about causing maximum damage before they died. "All ships, implement Protocol 7. Make them pay for every one of us." Protocol 7 was humanity's answer to overwhelming odds, controlled chaos. Instead of fighting as a coordinated fleet, the human ships split up and attacked individual targets. Each captain was free to cause as much destruction as possible before their ship was destroyed. Captain Lisa Ward's stolen Kythera vessel proved to be the key to the entire operation. While the aliens were focused on the obvious human attackers, Ward piloted her disguised ship deep into the shipyard's core. Her target was the Central Command Center, a crystalline spire that controlled the entire facility. The Payback's weapons were Kythera technology, far more powerful than anything the humans had built. Ward used them to tear through the shipyard's defenses from the inside, hitting targets that should have been impossible to reach. The aliens found themselves under attack from their own ship, using their own weapons against them. "Internal explosion on level 7, Morris reported. "Their command structure is falling apart," Ward smiled grimly as she watched Cathara commanders try to coordinate a defense against an enemy that was already inside their strongest fortress. "Take us to the main reactor. If we're going to die here, let's make it count." The payback raced through the shipyard's interior corridors, too fast for the alien defenders to intercept. Ward's ship was taking damage from defensive systems, but she only needed to survive for another few minutes. The main reactor chamber was the size of a small city, filled with massive generators that powered the entire facility. Ward looked at the readings on her screen and realized that destroying it would cause an explosion visible from other star systems. "All hands, prepare for reactor overload," she announced to her crew. "It's been an honor serving with you." The nuclear charges they had planted throughout the ship detonated simultaneously, turning the payback into a guided missile aimed at the heart of Cathara industrial power. The explosion that followed was beyond anything humans had ever witnessed. "Commander," Blake watched from the bridge of the Retribution as the entire shipyard disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire. The facility that had taken decades to build was gone in seconds, along with everyone inside it. The light from the explosion was so bright that ships throughout the system had to shield their sensors. "Jesus Christ," whispered his tactical officer. "They actually did it." Blake felt no satisfaction at the victory. Ward and her entire crew were dead, along with hundreds of Kithara workers and thousands of half-built warships. The cost of the operation had been enormous, but the strategic impact was even greater. "All surviving ships, withdraw to Rally Point Alpha," Blake ordered. Mission accomplished. The human fleet's withdrawal was almost as chaotic as their attack had been. Only 7 ships escaped the system, their hulls scarred by energy weapons and their crews exhausted by the intensity of the battle. But they had accomplished something that would be remembered for generations. The destruction of Kelvin Prime sent shockwaves through the Cathara Dominion. High Admiral Velthara stood before the Grand Council, delivering a report that would have been unthinkable just 2 years earlier. "The shipyard is completely destroyed," she said, her crystalline form flickering with barely contained rage. "Production capacity has been reduced by 40%. It will take years to rebuild what the humans destroyed in minutes." Grand Admiral Kexnoth studied the damage reports with growing disbelief. "How did they penetrate our defenses? Kelvin Prime was protected by 200 ships. They used one of our own vessels against us. The humans somehow captured and repaired a destroyer-class ship, then used it to bypass our security systems. By the time we realized what was happening, they were already inside our perimeter. Impossible. No primitive species could operate our technology. Yet they did. Our analysis shows they have been studying captured Cathara equipment for months. They are learning, adapting, improving their capabilities at a rate we never anticipated." The Yao. Grand Council fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans were not just fighting back anymore. They were winning. Species across the galaxy were watching the war with new interest, seeing for the first time that the mighty Kithara could be hurt. Reports began filtering in from across the Dominion. 3 more subject worlds had declared independence. Kithara. Supply convoys were under constant attack. Most disturbing of all, other species were beginning to study human tactics and apply them to their own resistance movements. Commander Zekthar, the officer who had started this war by underestimating a primitive species, now found himself struggling to contain a galaxy-wide rebellion. The humans had become more than just another enemy. They had become a symbol of hope for every species that had ever dreamed of freedom. But the war was far from over. The Cathara still controlled most of the galaxy, and their remaining fleets were converging on human space with orders to end the rebellion once and for all. The final battle was coming, and both sides knew that only one species would survive to see its end. 3 years after the first alien ship appeared in Earth's sky, the galaxy burned with rebellion. High Admiral Velthara stood in the command center of the Cathara flagship Absolute Authority, watching holographic displays that showed the collapse of an empire. Red warning lights marked 17 worlds in open revolt. Yellow indicators showed another 30 systems where Cathara control was failing. "Status report," she demanded. Subcommander Melkara approached with data tablets that flickered with bad news. "The Zalani system has declared independence. The Mortak rebellion has spread to 6 more worlds. Our supply lines to the outer rim are completely cut. Velthera studied the tactical displays with growing desperation. The humans had done more than just resist conquest. They had shown the entire galaxy that the Cathera could be beaten. Every species that had ever dreamed of freedom was now following the human example. What about our fleet strength? Down to 60% of original capacity. The humans continue to target our shipyards and supply depots. They strike fast and disappear before our reinforcements arrive. And their own forces? Growing stronger every month. Intelligence reports suggest they now have over 2,000 ships spread across 40 systems. They are building bases in asteroid belts and hidden colonies on dead worlds. Velthera felt something she had never experienced before: fear of defeat. The Cathera Dominion had ruled for 3,000 years, but that rule was crumbling faster than anyone had thought possible. The humans had turned their greatest weakness into an unstoppable weapon. Meanwhile, President Lisa Coleman sat in the war room beneath the ruins of Geneva, surrounded by military leaders from across human space. The building above had been destroyed in the first alien attack 3 years ago, but humanity had learned to work from the rubble. It seemed fitting somehow. The Cathera have requested peace negotiations, Admiral Grace Parker announced. They want to meet at Haven Station in neutral space. Coleman studied the faces around the table. These were people who had seen their families killed, their worlds burned, their species nearly destroyed by alien arrogance. The idea of peace talks should have been welcome news, but Coleman could see the suspicion in their eyes. "What are they offering?" asked General Mike Ross. "Recognition of human territorial claims in the Outer Rim, trade agreements, a formal end to hostilities. And what do they want in return?" Parker's expression hardened. "An end to support for the rebellions. They want us to stop helping other species fight for independence." The room fell silent. Coleman could feel the anger building around the table, like pressure in a sealed container. The Cathera still thought this was about territory and trade agreements. They still did not understand what they were really fighting. "Set up the meeting," Coleman said finally, "but make it clear that we negotiate as equals, not as subjects." Haven Station orbited a small moon in unclaimed space, built by traders, who wanted nothing to do with galactic politics. The station's neutral status made it perfect for peace talks between 2 species that had been trying to kill each other for 3 years. Admiral Parker arrived with a small escort fleet, including the UES Determination under Commander Tony Blake. The ship had been built from the wreckage of vessels destroyed at Kelvin Prime, a symbol of humanity's ability to rebuild from any disaster. Commander Zekthar waited in the station's main conference room, his crystalline form dimmed with what humans might have recognized as exhaustion. The officer who had started this war, by calling humans primitive animals, now looked like he had aged a century in 3 years. "Admiral Parker," he said through the translation system, "I hope we can find a solution that benefits both our species." Parker took her seat across the table. She had lost 2 sons in this war, one at the First Battle of Earth and another during a raid on a Cathera supply depot. The idea of making peace with their killers burned in her throat like acid. "That depends on what you're offering," she said. The negotiations lasted for days. The Cathera proposed territorial divisions, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. They offered to recognize human independence in exchange for an end to the galaxy-wide rebellion that was tearing their empire apart. But every proposal ran into the same problem. The Cathara still thought of humans as an inferior species that had gotten lucky. They were willing to grant concessions, but they expected gratitude in return. The breakthrough came when Commander Blake was asked to provide a military assessment of continued warfare. He stood at the head of the table, looking at beings who could destroy planets with their technology, and told them a truth that changed everything. "You want to know why you can't win this war?" Blake said. "It's because you still don't understand what you're fighting. You think this is about territory or resources or who gets to rule what systems, but you're wrong." Zekthar's form flickered with colors that indicated confusion. "Explain." "You're fighting human nature itself. We don't fight because we want your empire. We fight because we refuse to kneel. You could destroy every human ship, burn every human world, kill every human in the galaxy, and we would still fight you with rocks and sticks because that's who we are. That is illogical. No, species would choose extinction over reasonable terms. Blake smiled. And for the first time since the negotiations began, the Kythera delegates seemed to understand they were looking at something completely alien to their way of thinking. You're right, Blake continued. It is illogical. We are weaker than you, slower than you, and less advanced than you. Our weapons are primitive, our ships are crude, and our tactics make no sense by your standards. But we have something you don't have and never will have. We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Velthara was the first to speak. You are saying that you would rather die than accept our rule. Not just us, Parker added. Every species in the galaxy that has seen what we've accomplished. You created something you never intended, hope. Now every world under your control knows that the mighty Kythera can be hurt, can be beaten, can be forced to retreat. And if we refuse your terms? Blake leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of 3 years of war. Then we keep fighting. We build more ships, hit more targets, inspire more rebellions. We turn your empire into a battleground that bleeds you dry one system at a time. We make ruling the galaxy so expensive that you bankrupt yourselves trying to hold it together. Even if it destroys your own civilization? Especially then, because freedom is worth any price, and a galaxy where humans kneel to anyone is not a galaxy worth living in. The final treaty was signed 3 days later. The Kythera Dominion agreed to withdraw from all contested systems and recognize the independence of any world that chose to break away. They would pay reparations for the destruction of human colonies and provide technological assistance to help rebuild what the war had destroyed. In return, humanity agreed to formal peace and an end to direct military support for rebellions. But both sides understood the real meaning of the agreement. The age of Kythera dominance was over. President Coleman received the news in her underground office, surrounded by the same advisors who had chosen war over surrender 3 years earlier. The cost had been enormous. 50 million humans dead, dozens of worlds damaged, an entire generation that had known nothing but war. But they had won something that no weapon could destroy, the right to exist on their own terms. 6 months after the treaty was signed, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. 17 species had declared independence from the Dominion. Trade networks were being rebuilt without Kythera oversight. New alliances were forming between worlds that had rediscovered the concept of freedom. The Kythera Dominion still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. They controlled perhaps a third of their original territory and spent most of their resources dealing with ongoing rebellions. The species that had once ruled the galaxy now struggled to maintain order in their own core systems. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more dangerous. They had taught it to dream of freedom. The humans had proven that any species, no matter how primitive or outmatched, could fight for independence and win. Commander Zekthar, the officer who had dismissed humans as violent animals, now studied their tactics in military academies across Kythera space. The lessons were bitter but necessary. Never underestimate an enemy's will to fight. Never assume superior technology guarantees victory. And never start a war with a species that would rather die than surrender. The galaxy had learned to fear something new. Not superior weapons or advanced technology, but the simple human refusal to accept defeat. They had feared nothing until they met humans and started a war they could never win. And in the end, that fear had set the galaxy free.